Hello, how's it going, guys? Today we're going to be jumping into Samuel chapter, I think it's 25, right? I have it wrong up there. Doom, doom, doom. Yeah, 25. Let me get the text up on screen. Dum, 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 dum. What's going on? There we go. I was bugging out for a sec. Alright, let me change the text up on there and then we'll get started, okay? We're doing... What are we doing? 25 to 27, I believe, right? Yeah. Okay. So, what have we been talking about lately? Right? David and Samuel, David and Saul, sorry. David and Saul, that dynamic right there. David has been running away from Saul. David's been running from Saul, and they sort of reconciled at the last part in chapter 24, right? David spares Saul, right? He had the chance to kill him. He cut a piece of his garment off, and Saul realizes, okay, this guy is not trying to kill me, you know. So it ended on a good note, right? And they basically promised that, David, right? Saul had David promise, that for the rest of Saul's generations, David's not going to be like, not going to go against the Saul's descendants, right? What does it say? Therefore, swear to me now by the Lord that you will not cut off my descendants after me, that you will not destroy my name from my father's house. And we saw that Jonathan had already made a promise with David regarding the similar thing, right? And Saul's descendants, Jonathan's descendants are the same thing. So that was going to happen regardless. But anyways, let's jump into chapter 25, 1 Samuel chapter 25, and let's get started.
Then Samuel died, and the Israelites gathered together and lamented for him,
Well, that's
and
one way to
buried
start.
him at his home in Ramah. And David arose and went down to the wilderness of Paran. Now there was a man in Maon whose business was in Carmel, and the man was very rich. He had 3,000 sheep and 1,000 goats, and he was shearing his sheep in Carmel. The name of the man was Nabal, and the name of his wife Abigail. And she was a woman of good understanding and beautiful appearance. But the man was harsh and evil in his doings. He was of the house of Caleb. When David heard in the wilderness that Nabal was shearing his sheep, David sent 10 young men. And David said to the young men,
Go up to Carmel, go to Nabal, and greet him in my name. And thus you shall say to him who lives in prosperity, Peace be to you, peace to your house, and peace to all you have. Now I have heard that you have shearers. Your shepherds were with us, and we did not hurt them, nor was there anything missing from them all the while they were in Carmel. Ask your young men, and they will tell you. Therefore, let my young men find favor in your eyes, for we come on a feast day. Please give whatever comes to your hand, to your servants, and to your son David.
So when David's young men came, they spoke to Nabal, according to all these words in the name of David, and waited. Then Nabal answered David's servants,
Who is David, and who is the son of Jesse?
Yeah, I was wondering, like, how would Nabal know David, right? And it says, to your son, David. I guess that's in he wants to come from a place of respect, right? Um, because he was a rich guy, right? It says, now there was a man in Maon whose business was in town, and the man was very rich, right? So he just wanted to show some respect to the guy.
David's servants.
Who is David, and who is the son of Jesse? There are many servants nowadays who break away, each one from his master. Shall I then take my bread, and my water, and my meat that I have killed for my shearers, and give it to men when I do not know where they are from?
So David's young men turned on their heels and went back. And they came and told him all these words. Then David said to his men,
Every man gird on his sword.
So every man girded on his sword, and David also girded on his sword. And about 400 men went with
What does
David,
girded mean?
and 200 stayed with the supplies. Now one of the young men told Abigail, Nabal's wife,
Let me look it up. What's girded? Simple past tense and past participle of gird. Yeah, okay. What is gird? To jeer or jeer at. To jeer at their sword? To encircle or fasten. Encircle or bind with a flexible band. Prepare oneself for action. Okay, so ready their sword.
wife,
Look,
and told Abigail, Nabal's wife,
Look, David sent messengers from the wilderness to greet our master, and he reviled them. But the men were very good to us, and we were not hurt, nor did we miss anything as long as we accompanied them when we were in the fields. They were a wall to us, both by night and day, all the time we were with them keeping the sheep. Now, therefore, know and consider what you will do. For harm is determined against our master and against all his household. For he is such a scoundrel that one cannot speak to him.
Then Abigail made haste and took 200 loaves of bread, 2 skins of wine, 5 sheep already dressed, 5 seahs of roasted grain, 100 clusters of raisins, and 200 cakes of figs, and loaded them on donkeys. And she said to her servants,
Go on before me. See, I am coming after you.
But she did not tell her husband, Nabal. So it was, as she rode on the donkey, that she went down under cover of the hill. And there were David and his men coming down toward her, and she met them. Now David had said,
Surely in vain I have protected all that this fellow has in the wilderness, so that nothing was missed of all that belongs to him. And he...
Did he know that he was being protected? I mean, his servants knew, but then Nabal said, who is this David, son of Jesse, right? Does his Bible have anything to say? Oh, who is David? Nabal pretended not to know David. He added insult to injury by suggesting that David might just be another runaway servant. Nabal lived in a region where water was scarce. Nabal's own men testified to the care and protection that they received from David and his men. We just saw that. Let me see, read this. David and his men had generously protected Nabal's flocks and possessions. Since it was the time of the sheep shearing, Nabal would have had plenty of cash from the sale of wool and to reward David and his men for their services. Verse 15, 16, right? So David was protecting them. Did I miss that? It says verses 15, 16, and 21. It says they were a wall to us both by night and day. And all the time we were with them keeping the sheep. Okay. So they did protect them while they were watching the sheep. So David was like, I did this for you. I mean, not expecting anything, but he asked. And Nabal said he didn't even know who David was. So that is
And
actually
his
messed up.
men her face before David and bowed down to the ground.
All that belongs to him.
And there were David and his men coming down toward her, and she met them. Now David had said,
Surely in vain I have protected all that this fellow has in the wilderness, so that nothing was missed of all that belongs to him. And he has repaid me evil for good. May God do so, and more also, to the enemies of David, if I leave one male of all who belong to him by morning light.
Now when Abigail saw David, she dismounted quickly from the donkey, fell on her face before David, and bowed down to the ground. So she fell at his feet and said,
On me, my lord. On me let this iniquity be. And please, let your maidservant speak in your ears, and hear the words of your maidservant. Please, let not my lord regard this scoundrel Nabal. For as his name is, so is he. Nabal,
does Nabal
is his
mean?
name, and folly is with him. But I, your maidservant, did not see the young men of my lord whom you sent. Now therefore, my lord, as the Lord lives and as your soul lives,
Nabal
since
means
the Lord
fool,
has held
apparently.
you back from coming to bloodshed and from avenging yourself with your own hand, now then, let your enemies and those who seek harm for my lord be as Nabal. And now this present which your maidservant has brought to my lord, let it be given to the young men who follow my lord. Please forgive the trespass of your maidservant, for the Lord will certainly make for my lord an enduring house, because my lord fights the battles of the Lord, and evil is not found in you throughout your days. Yet a man has risen to pursue you and seek your life. But the life of my lord shall be bound in the bundle of the living with the Lord your God, and the lives of your enemies he shall sling out as from the pocket of a sling.
She's just saying whatever
And
she
it
needs
shall come to pass,
to save
when the
Nabal.
Lord has done for my lord according to all the good that he has spoken concerning you, and has appointed you ruler over Israel,
She's a
that
good
this
speaker,
will
though.
be no grief to you, nor offense of heart to my lord, either that you have shed blood without cause, or that my lord has avenged himself. But when the Lord has dealt well with my lord, then remember your maidservant.
Blessed is the Lord God of Israel, who sent you this day to meet me. And blessed is your advice, and blessed are you, because you have kept me this day from coming to bloodshed, and from avenging myself with my own hand. For indeed, as the Lord God of Israel lives, who has kept me back from hurting you, unless you had hurried and come to meet me, surely by morning light no males would have been left to Nabal.
So David received from her hand what she had brought him, and said to her,
Go up in peace to your house. See, I have heeded your voice and respected your person.
Now Abigail went to Nabal, and there he was, holding a feast in his house, like the feast of a king.
He didn't know any of this was about to
Nabal's
happen.
heart was merry within him, for he was very drunk. Therefore she told him nothing, little
She
or
just
much,
saved his
until
life.
morning light. So it was in the morning, when the wine had gone from Nabal, and his wife had told him these things, that his heart died within him, and he became like a stone. Then it happened, after about 10 days, that the Lord struck Nabal,
Oh.
and he died. So when David heard that Nabal was dead, he said,
Blessed be the Lord, who has pleaded the cause of my reproach from the hand of Nabal, and has kept his servant from evil. For the Lord has returned the wickedness of Nabal on his own head.
And David sent and proposed to Abigail to take her as his wife. When the servants of David had come to Abigail at Carmel, they spoke to her.
David sent us to you to ask you to become his wife.
Then she arose, bowed her face to the earth.
Here is your maidservant, a servant to wash the feet of the servants of my lord.
So Abigail rose in haste and rode on a donkey, attended by 5 of her maidens. And she followed the messengers of David and became his wife. David also took Ahinoam of Jezreel, and so both of them were his wives. But
3
Saul
wives now.
had given Michal, his daughter, David's wife, to Paltai, the son of Laish, who was from Galim.
What? They were David. What? You can just give someone else's wife to somebody else?
Now the Ziphites came to Saul at Gibeah.
That's messed
David
up.
not hiding in the hill of Hachilah, opposite Jeshimon?
Then Saul arose and went down to the wilderness of Ziph, having 3,000 chosen men of Israel with him, to seek David in the wilderness of Ziph.
Yeah, so all that reconciliation in chapter 24 is just gone. While David was out, Saul gave away his wife, and now he's coming back. Now he's coming after him again. Saul gave away David's wife. Did I say gave David's wife? Saul gave away David's wife. Now he's coming back after him.
And Saul encamped in the hill of Hachilah, which is opposite Jeshimon, by the road. But David stayed in the wilderness, and he saw that Saul came after him into the wilderness. David therefore sent out spies, and understood that Saul had indeed come. So David arose and came to the place where Saul had encamped. And David saw the place where Saul lay, and Abner, the son of Ner, the commander of his army. Now Saul lay within the camp, with the people encamped all around him. Then David answered, and said to Ahimelech the Hittite, and to Abishai, the son of Zeruiah, brother of Joab,
Who will go down with me to Saul in the camp?
and Abishai said,
I will go down with you.
So
That could
David
be a
and
death sentence.
Abishai came to the people by night, and there Saul lay sleeping within the camp, with his spear stuck in the ground.
Ah, okay. So I've talked about this in the last video, where the story that I've always heard is David and his people sneaking, David and actually one other guy, this guy, Abishai, right, sneaking into Saul's camp, and was about to kill him, but then spared him, right? And I was like, oh, that's a story I've heard where they snuck into the camp, but what happened yesterday was Saul camped in a cave that David was already in. David and his people were in the back of the cave. So David could have struck Saul down that night, but didn't. So this is the second time this is happening. So I've only heard about this story. I didn't hear about the last one. So that's cool. It happened twice.
By his head, and Abner and the people lay all around him. Then Abishai said to David,
God has delivered your enemy into your hand this day. Now, therefore, please, let me strike him at once with the spear, right to the earth, and I will not have to strike him a second time.
Do not destroy him. For who can stretch out his hand against the Lord's anointed and be guiltless? As the Lord lives, the Lord shall strike him.
And he's learned his lesson with Nabal, right? And Abigail.
Or his day shall come to die, or he shall go out to battle and perish. The Lord forbid that I should stretch out my hand against the Lord's anointed. But please, take now the spear and the jug of water that are by his head, and let us go.
So David took the spear and the jug of water by Saul's head, and they got away. and no man saw or knew it or awoke.
Actually, I think I've
For
heard
they
both
were
of
all
the
asleep,
stories.
because a deep sleep from the Lord had fallen on them. Now David went over to the other side, and stood on the top of a hill afar off, a great distance being between them. And David called out to the people and to Abner, the son of Ner.
Do you not answer,
Abner, the son of
Who
Ner.
are you? Calling
That's not a
out
coincidence.
To the king.
Are you not a man? And who is like you in Israel? Why then have you not guarded your lord the king? For one of the people came in to destroy your lord the king. This thing that you have done is not good. As the Lord lives, you deserve to die, because you have not guarded your master, the Lord's anointed. And now see where the king's spear is, and the jug of water that was by his head.
Then Saul knew David's voice.
Is this your voice, my son David?
It is
come
my
on,
voice,
Saul.
my lord, O king.
He just gave away his
Why
wife.
does my lord thus pursue his servant? For what have I done? Or what evil is in my hand?
Yep.
Now therefore, please let my lord the king hear the words of his servant. If the Lord has stirred you up against me, let him accept an offering. But if it is the children of men, may they be cursed before the Lord. For they have driven me out this day from sharing in the inheritance of the Lord, saying, Go, serve other gods. So now, do not let my blood fall to the earth before the face of the Lord. For the king of Israel has come out to seek a flea, as when one hunts a partridge in the mountains.
I have sinned. Return, my son David, for I will harm you no more, because
I don't
my
know.
life was precious in your eyes this day.
Yeah.
Indeed,
You said the same
I
thing
have
last
played
time.
the fool and erred exceedingly.
Here is the king's spear. Let one of the young men come over and get it. May the Lord repay every man for his righteousness and his faithfulness, for the Lord delivered you into my hand today. But I would not stretch out my hand against the Lord's anointed. And indeed, as your life was valued much this day in my eyes, so let my life be valued much in the eyes of the Lord, and let him deliver me out of all tribulation.
Not even saying, let my life be valued in the eyes of you, Saul. Let my eyes be valued in the eyes of the Lord, and let him deliver me out of all tribulation. So that covers all grounds. Okay, that's good.
May you be blessed, my son David. You shall both do great things
He
and
just went
also
right
still
around
prevail.
Saul with that sentence.
So David went on his way, and Saul returned to his place.
All right, 27.
And David said in his heart,
Now I shall perish someday by the hand of Saul.
Come on,
There is
don't give
nothing
up.
better for me than that I should speedily escape to the land of the Philistines, and Saul will despair of me to
The
seek me any
Philistines?
more in any part of Israel. So I shall escape out of his hand.
Then David arose and went over with the 600 men who were with him to Achish, the son of Maach, king of Gath.
600? Was it always 600?
So David
It was 200
dwelt with Achish at Gath,
or 400.
he and his men, each man with his household,
Oh,
and
right.
David,
I think it was right. They split up. Right.
each man with his household, and David with his 2 wives, Ahinoam the Jezreelitess, and Abigail the
I wonder what
Carmelitess,
Michael is
Nabal's
feeling.
widow. And it was told Saul that David had fled to Gath, so he sought him no more. Then David said to Achish,
Yeah, because
If I
Saul's not
have now
entering
found
Philistine
favor
territory.
in your eyes, let them give me a place in some town in the country, that I may dwell there. For why should your servant dwell in the royal city with you?
So Achish gave him Ziklag that day. Therefore Ziklag has belonged to the kings of Judah to this day. Now the time that David dwelt in the country of the Philistines was 1 full year and 4 months.
That's a decent amount of time.
And David and his men went up and raided the Geshurites, the Girzites, and the Amalekites. For those nations were the inhabitants of the land from of old, as you go to Shur, even as far as the land of Egypt. Whenever David attacked the land, he left neither man nor woman alive, but took away the sheep, the oxen, the donkeys, the camels, and the apparel, and returned and came to Achish. Then Achish would say,
"Where have you made a raid today?"
It's a daily activity
and
David
would
did.
say,
Against the southern area of Judah, or against the southern area of the Jerahmeelites, or against the southern area of the Kenites.
David would save neither man nor woman alive, to bring news to Gath, saying,
Lest they should inform on us, saying, Thus David did.
And thus was his behavior all the time he dwelt in the country of the Philistines.
Okay.
So Achish believed David.
He has made his people Israel utterly abhor him. Therefore he will be my servant forever.
Against the southern area of Judah. Wait. Time out. Against the southern area of Judah, meaning were there Philistines living in those areas? So he was killing Philistines in these areas? Or was he actually killing Israelites so that he would be safe in Philistine in Philistine territory? And David would say against the southern area of Judah, or against the southern area of the Jerahmeelites, or against the southern area of the Kenites. David would save neither man nor woman alive, to bring news to Gath, saying, lest they should inform on us, saying, thus David did. And thus was his behavior all the time he dwelt in the country of the Philistines. So Achish believed David, saying, he has made his people Israel utterly abhor him. Therefore he will be my servant forever. I need an explanation, because I don't remember where the Jerahmeelites or the Kenites are. What is this? 27:11. The complete destruction of... Okay, let me just lift this up. Or here. Where have you made your raid today? Although David pretended to serve the interests of Achish, he was actually attacking the enemies of Israel. The southern area of the Jerahmeelites was part of the Negev occupied by the family of Jerahmeel, one of the clans of Judah. One of the clans of Judah, but wouldn't that be Israelites, not Philistines? The Kenites, who were loosely associated with the Israelites since Moses' marriage into the family of Jethro, a Kenite, was, there were Kenites, right? Were a nomadic offshoot of the Midianites. In fact, David was on friendly terms with both the Jerahmeelites and the Kenites. Dang, so he killed people he was on friendly terms with? The complete destruction of human life seems to be the only way David was able to avoid discovery. David might also have reasoned that he was working to complete the destruction of the people of the land that had not been done fully during the time of the conquest, right, in Joshua. What is the phrase? He will be my servant forever, right? Achish believed that David would be his servant forever. David's deception was so effective that Achish concluded that his switch in allegiance was permanent. But why would he believe that his switch was permanent if he was killing enemies of Israel? Did Achish not know that? Well, I mean, he killed the Kenites who were his allies, and the Jerahmeelites who was his allies. So, I guess, yeah. I don't get why it's saying that he killed the enemies of Israel. The Negev occupied by the family of Jerahmeel, one of the clans of Judah. Let me look up Negev. Right, we're done with yeah, this is good. Yeah, so we finished the reading, so that's good. Negev, Judah. What is the Negev of Judah, right? The Negev, boom. The Negev is an arid region that spans the southern part of Israel and occupies almost half of the Palestine west of the Jordan River. This region accounts for some 60% of Israeli territory under... Okay, well, we want... let's type in David. All right, there. What is the significance of the Negev in the Bible, right? Negev is a hot, dry region in the southern part of Israel that receives less than 8 inches of rainfall a year. Wow, that's really dry. The region extends between Beersheba and Kadesh Barnea from the north to the south. Abraham returned to settle in Negev right after the destruction of Sodom. Joshua led the people of Israel in military conquest to the lands of Negev, taking control from its native inhabitants. Eventually, the region was allotted to the tribes of Judah and Simeon. So this is part of the promised land. Ziklag, a city in Negev, was given to David by Achish, the Philistine king of Gath. David had fled. Okay, so a city in Negev was given. Okay, so that means the Philistines had overtaken parts of the promised land. David had fled there when King Saul sought to harm him. Later, the same city in the name Negev of Caleb, was raided by Amalekite warriors. We didn't get to that. Interesting. So it seems like the place was overtaken by the Philistines. So when it says that David was, this is the commentary saying that David was actually attacking the enemies of Israel. I'm not so sure about that, right? The southern area of Jerahmeelites was part of the Negev, occupied by the family of the Jerahmeel, one of the clans of Judah. The Kenites, who were loosely associated with the Israelites since Moses' marriage into the family of Jethro, a Kenite, were a nomadic offshoot of the Midianites. In fact, David was on friendly terms with both the Jerahmeelites and the Kenites. So how is that enemies of Israel? Like David was just on friendly terms with them? And if they were enemies of Israel, wouldn't Achish see right through that? I don't know. Let me know what you guys think about that down in the comment section, because that's interesting. Let me look this up. Who did David kill while in what was it? Ziklag? I forgot how that was spelled. Ziklag. When we meet David in chapter 27, he is still on the run from Saul. In hopes to hope that Saul will call off his pursuit, David decides to pack up his wives and his followers and move across the border into Philistine territory. David's hope is that all right, so that's not talking about that. No. Two times David has proven his loyalty, right? We saw that. David conceives what is his plan? So David decides it's time for him to take some definitive action to cause Saul to give up his hunt. David conceives this plan to flee to King Achish of the Philistines to escape Saul once and for all. King Achish, unlike his response to David in chapter 20, this time welcomes David and his company. By this time, Achish was aware of the very public breach between David and Saul. So maybe Achish is thinking like, okay, so David is an enemy of Israel right now. An enemy of my enemy is a friend. He could probably turn David into an ally. Since David was no longer welcome in Israel, he could entire this very capable warrior as a mercenary, his soldier for hire. Broadly speaking, the plot line for the chapter is, although David's strategy does not indeed solve his problem, he does this without looking to God in any way. God is excluded and replaced by David's wits and cunning. But David shows zero faith or dependence on God here. And we must see that in the light of Hebrews 11:6 that tells us, and without faith it is impossible to please him. For whoever would draw near to God must believe that he exists and that he rewards those who seek him. There is zero evidence in this chapter that David seeks God at all, and his independence from God continues until chapter 30, when a crisis forces him to look in faith to God for help. Okay. But I want to know who David was killing. First Samuel 27:11, right? Let me go back. The answer of David to his sovereign lord, the king of Gath, for he was now to all intents and purposes a vassal prince of Achish, was simply a falsehood. He had been engaged in distant forays against the old Bedouin enemies of Israel, far away in the desert, which stretched to the frontier of Egypt. And from these nomads, rich in cattle and in other property, which they had obtained by years of successful plunder, he seems to have gained much bounty, a share of which he brought to his suzerain Achish. But David represents the cattle and apparel had been captured from his own countrymen whose territory he was harrying. The Jerahmeelites were descendants of Jerahmeel, firstborn of Hezron, and therefore one of the three large families of Judah, who sprang from the Hezron. Keel. Okay, that's a reference. They dwelt, it is believed, on the southern frontier of the tribe of Judah. The Kenites were a race living in friendship with and under the protection of Judah. Okay, so this is guy saying that he killed enemies of Israel, but told Achish that he was killing enemies. He was killing his allies, killing David's allies. David was killing his allies, right? I'm going to go back to the actual text and see if that's what was said. Did I go too much? Where is he? Oh, it is right here. My bad. Wherever David attacked the land he left. Wait, let me go back to show. And David and his men went up and raided the Geshurites, the Girzites, and the Amalekites. Okay. And David and his men went up and raided the Geshurites, the Girzites, and the Amalekites. For those nations were the inhabitants of the land from of old, as you go to Shur, even as far as the lands of Egypt. Whenever David attacked the land, he left no man or woman alive, took the sheep and the oxen. Right? But when Achish confronted David about who he killed, David would say, against the southern area of Judah, or against the southern area of the Jerahmeelites, or against the southern area of the Kenites. So David was lying to Achish. Okay. So that makes a whole lot of sense right there. So we just missed that line right over here. Okay, there we go. That makes sense. All right. Okay. So that's it for today. Let me know, guys. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section. And we'll continue with chapter 28 tomorrow. So that's going to be it for 27, 28 tomorrow, and we'll continue from there. All right? Hope you guys enjoyed today's reading, and I'll see you guys tomorrow for 1 Samuel chapter 28 tomorrow. Take care. Bye-bye.